Good morning, West USA. Welcome to another edition of our Monday morning webinar where we've spent the last 10 minutes talking about exercise and working out. And at the end of the day, people just get hurt and injured, okay? I don't get hurt and injured sitting on the couch watching football. So anyways, we appreciate everybody joining us today. Little sneak peek of what we got coming up today. All right. Todd, of course, is here to give us a look at the numbers. Matt Baker with the Bookspan Baker team is going to give us our mortgage a minute. And I'm going to talk about three things that I'm doing to overcome the conversations I'm having with buyers of interest rates are too high. I don't want to get into the game because of interest rates and so forth. So we're going to talk about how I handle those objections. And then Kyle Fouts is here, and we're going to talk about procuring COGS because apparently that is what's on everybody's minds. As usual, if you got any comments or questions, please feel free to email us at webinar@westusa.com, and we will get back to you in a timely fashion. All right, so a lot of announcements this morning, so we're going to breeze through these, but our own Carlos Cicero out of the Chandler office, he's having his third annual golf tournament. Great opportunity to bring some clients, get a foursome, great way to spend some time with some clients and convert. I close more deals on the golf course than I do anywhere else because I got 4 hours of people's undivided attention. So just reach out if you'd like some more information. Email Carlos. His email is on the screen, and that is coming up Saturday, June 18th. All right, so understanding new construction, what's going on with new construction and a lot of changes with the way new construction and the quality of some of the new construction. But we have a disclosure CE class coming up. That is tomorrow, May 24th from 1 to 4 at the Chandler office. If you're interested in learning more about HUD Homes, we've got an in-person lunch and learn coming up tomorrow as well from 10 to 11:30. That is going to be at the Mesa office. And I should remind everybody, as always, all these events can be found on the calendar on the dashboard. All right, so I noticed how Nick had to throw this in there. Let's make this about Nick. So the surprise office meeting is coming up tomorrow from 10 to 11, featuring Nick Wiedekamp.
I actually didn't do the announcements this morning. I forgot I was talking tomorrow at Surprise Office. So thanks, Mikey.
All right. So what are you going to talk about?
We're going to talk about
procuring costs.
Procuring. Yeah, I'm going to do a broker hour for anyone who want to come down and get the worst answers to your questions. No, we're going to focus on, and I know in this marketplace it might not be the thing you need right now, but we want to remind everybody about the core listing machine system that we have. It markets your listings. It's automated. We're going to talk about some of the mobile apps that we have at the company as well. I'm actually going to host the surprise meeting. We realized with Anna moving over to Arrowhead that I was the one to be out there. So I'm going to play MC. I'm very excited about that. So
all right. Yeah. Generally, when I used to do the office meetings, I had to travel with a broker just to,
because you're not.
So the broker would have to go up there and say, yeah, don't listen to him.
Actually, I think Susan is going to be there.
All right. We got a virtual agent roundtable on knock coming up tomorrow as well at 1 o'clock. Tomorrow's a busy day, so you need to learn a little bit more about knock and how that is helping agents secure more deals. So that is coming up tomorrow, Tuesday, May 24th. Todd's got a CE class coming up Wednesday. 3 hours of contract law, 9 to 12. This will be virtual as well. All right, learning everything you need to know about FHA and VA loans and what agents need to know. I was working on a VA loan over the weekend. It had been a long time, but VA and FHA loans are back, which reminds me I've got to resolve those issues after the webinar. But that's coming up Wednesday, May 25th from 1 to 4. Especially those of you that are new and jumped into the real estate game over the last 2 years. This would be a great class for you to attend. All right, and then Keith, the other Ryan, Keith, this Thursday from 10 to 11 o'clock, doing a virtual trading class on crafting a killer agent bio.
Everybody should do.
Opportunity.
Oh my gosh, yes.
All right. And then speaking of broker, Kyle Fouts is doing his next broker roundtable coming up this Thursday, May 26th from 10 to 11 o'clock. This will be via Zoom. Again, you don't have to necessarily write down that link. All of these events will be in the dashboard. And then we're going to have Dale Stauffer coming to the Mesa office meeting. I do so much training and teaching agents how to get more listings utilizing your iFound Agent website. Highly recommend that you attend this class. That's coming up this Friday from 10 to 11. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to also talk about the second half of that, which is Mr. Bob
Oh yeah,
Stevens.
don't do that.
Yeah,
It's hard to see with the camera. I can only see
That's a
these
good point right there.
flyers because
Yeah.
that camera's like right in the way.
Yeah.
Anyways, so at least I can see half the flyer, Nick.
Camera's this big, dude.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bob.
All right, Todd, take it away. What is going on in the market?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today we're going over the greater market statistics for the last week and the week prior, ending May 23rd. Let's see what's happening. Lots on the table today. 26 days closed on market, a 1.21 month supply. That's not inaccurate. It's over still now, 2-3 weeks in a row above over 1 month. 82.82 absorption rate, $807,000 average list price, $597,000 average sale price, and our list price to sale price retention has receded to 101.66, which is real nice. But here's the story of the day: 9,700 new active listings, single family residential in the marketplace. That's up 21%. That's not a mistake. Pending in the middle, 4,638. We're down just a little there, and closed units month to date at 5,710. Taking a look at new listings, here's part of the reason. What was our favorite number? 2,500. How many listings did we take? 2,641. Some stories behind that: 60.3 active days on market and 26 for closed. Take a look at the price ranges. Under $500,000 is sitting at 45.53%, 38 days on market. Again, if you're new to this sheet, we provide these for you because we want you to basically take this and send it to your consumer. You can use these sheets as long as you're a West USA agent. You can use these sheets. You have a extended license to be able to do that. These are copywritten materials to West USA, but you can send this out to your clients. You can send just one page, and this is that one page you would send. This is the market snapshot. So under 500,000 right now, representing 45%. Looking at our $500,000 to $1 million market, representing 39%. And so that's really the area right now where we're seeing these new listings added to the market are between 500 and $1 million. You can notice that by this crept from 33% to 34% last week up to 39% this week. So that's really where that jump was. That's really where the prices, if you were wondering. $1 million and up market, still relatively volatile. Look at that, 77 days on market for $1 million and up. That's normally like 224. So that, again, there are some of those listings that went into the $1 million plus market, because you can see we crept up from about 10% to 14%. So those are some pretty big jumps. But let's actually look at the spreadsheet and be able to analyze this. So we take a look, first of all, for those that, again, aren't familiar with us. In the very middle column, it says 2019 SW. That represents the same week in 2019, 3 years ago, prior to COVID. The column to the left, the salmon column, is 2021, same week. That's just last year, because we want to compare year over year. And then to the left of that, you have two white columns, which basically represent this week and the week prior. So as we look at this and we compare it even to the last month over in the first blue column, or the second month, 2 months ago, this gives you the ability to look at someone and say, what direction is the market heading? Todd just didn't put a green ticker there because we want it to be a green ticker. We put it there because it was a change. It went either up in a green ticker if it was good for the market, or red tickers if it was not so good. So in this particular case, 2,641 listings this past week was exceptionally good. Slide your eyes over to the right. You'll see same week last year was 2,322 listings. So we took 320 listings more this past week than we did the same a year ago. Look at the best year. These are 2019 to 2021 have been the best 3 years in residential sales in the history of the state of Arizona. And if you look at these statistics here, 3 years ago, prior to COVID, 2,200. So once again, not only did last year we beat a pre-COVID by 100, but this year we've beat it by 320. So there's some really cool things to be talking to your clients about right now. What that tells you, consumers are not afraid to list their homes because people are listing more homes today. You get this right. They're listing more homes today than they have in the past. So this is very important to know. We don't really have a seller, I'm really afraid about putting my house on the market because because they are putting their houses on the market in greater numbers than we did the year before. 9,704 is the active inventory right now, up from 79. Slide your eyes, we only had 5,850 properties available. We've got almost twice the inventory, a little short of that, of course. So let's just say, 1.75% times 150% anyway, of the inventory we had a year ago. Looking at the coming soon, we have 875. So that 9,704 active properties are made up of 875 coming soon listings. We have just over 8,000 single-family detached, 1,149 new homes. That went up about 34%. And the problem here is that that's skewing our numbers a little bit. So, if you really wanted to take a look at that, we probably had about 600 less growth in the residential perspective of resale than we did if we take those new homes out. Because we don't know what stages those are, if they're move-in ready or the builder's just marketing their stuff. Non-distressed property still represents 99.7% of the entire inventory, which basically means our distressed inventory is only representing 0.3. That has not moved. If you think that it's bad, slide your eyes to the right. Look at the goldenrod copy, the 2019. We had 64 short sales on the marketplace then, 102 lender-owned properties and 5 HUD properties, and you look today and we've got a fraction of that. So again, not an issue. Pending 4638. It's red because, quite honestly, we should have more people in the marketplace than we do right now. What do I mean by that? Last year we had 1,588 people in the marketplace under contract at any one time of this month. The 2 years before that, in 2019, the banner year, almost 6,500 people in the marketplace. So the inventory is growing, just so that you know, because we have 2,600 properties added this past week, and we have about 1,000 fewer people in the marketplace right now under contract than we did a year ago, and 2,000 for 3 years ago. So what this is representing is we could actually take a little more listings. We could actually close more buyer sides because we just have 1,000 less people in the marketplace today than we did last year. So when you're talking about these things, this is what's really going on. These are the statistics. These are the numbers that are coming out of this past week. So we look at closed. Again, we're over to half of the way there, so to the end of the month. And so these numbers start to get closer. But there's a disparity here as well. 5,700 is where we're at right now, closed units for the month of May. 6,700 is where we were a year ago. Slide your eyes way across. We were only at 4,700 back in 2019, which was a banner year. So again, based on 2019, we are 1,000 units more closed than we were then. So there's some silver linings here that, we just cannot fail to look at and identify. A 1.21 month supply, that's meaning over 1 month supply. Last year we were at a 0.77 month supply, and there's a little bit of a difference. Last week we were at 1.06, 1.88 month supply in 2019. This is good numbers. This is really, really stabilizing information for the marketplace, and it should be confident and comfortable for people putting their houses on the market that they can continue to get the pricing. The market has not receded and is not intending, even if we do go into a recession this year, it still is not going to recede dramatically as far as pricing is concerned. So 597,000 up just a little bit is the average sale price over this past week. And again, remember, average sale price over the properties that have closed in the last week. Taking a look down here at the inventory, we or the speed of inventory, the days on market, we've really already had that conversation on the prior slide. And we get down to list price to sale price retention, which is 101.66. That's less than 102. We should be at 97, if you slide your eyes way over to a balanced year. That center column is a balanced year. We're at 97.8. Slide your eyes all the way to the left, which is the rule of thumb column, way to the very edge of the slide. 97.8 is where that's the sweet spot of real estate. And so 3 years ago, we were right at that number. Today, we're still a little high, but we're trending the same number as we did last year. So these are good signs. Everything that we talked about today is a good thing. It's positive. You should be able to have good conversations with your clients this week on this slide. It's a great day.
All right. Appreciate it, Todd. As always, we're going to bring Matt Baker into the conversation. So Todd's got good news. Let's see what's going on.
Okay. They're not much worse. Is that fair to say? We're at a
better
really,
than 7%.
We're at a really interesting spot from a technical perspective. And if you follow statistics at all, there's all about moving averages. And as as we've kind of rates have gone up, we're at this kind of crescendo where, my crystal ball's a little foggy. Rates may get worse from here, and they may bounce off of this. But I think the general theme is this next week is important because new inflation data comes up, and so where that sits may either the Fed may like it or they may not, and sort of based on that feedback, you could see rates kind of preparing for the worst or maybe rallying from that. So it's going to be an interesting week. But today I wanted to talk more about what I found interesting in some housing supply and recession data that came out during the week. So let's go into, why recessions don't always equal a housing crisis. Now, obviously, you can look back at 2008, and some of us have that, PTSD from then, right? But look back at the 6 last recessions, and you would say, that doesn't necessarily mean. I guess the point here is that a recession doesn't equal housing bubble or housing crash, okay? Or housing crisis, whatever verbiage you want to use. So I think we have to take solace in that and know that, history matters. And let's look at that and take that into consideration. Because why do I say that? Well, let's talk the next slide. And so the media has been reporting about housing permits and starts and completions. And there's 2 things that you have to really think about when you talk about housing starts. And one of them is housing deconstruction. So now this next slide is going to be national averages. So get that. But the previous slide we talked about in there was 100,000 nationally homes are destroyed so that they can be replaced with these new houses. So when you go back to the housing start next slide, you're going to see that we had 1.8 million permits, 1.7 starts. This is nationally, and only about 1.3 completed. But of those 1.3 completed, there's about 100 that are being destroyed to be rebuilt, right? They're either old, they age out, what have you. Well, you can't look at this and not also then consider how many households we're forming. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Well, household formations is sort of the ideal of coupling up, right? And so when you think about households being formed, and we're kind of just coming into this younger millennial generation, they're just starting to form households. And so when you really think about that, we're kind of not even yet to that space. We added 1.4 million households in March. So when you really look at the inventory and you're like, well, gosh, if we got 1.195 being completed, because remember, the 100,000 are being destroyed, this is new inventory, but you're forming 1.4 million new households. Are you adding to supply or are you taking away from supply? And then if you remember, gosh, maybe a year ago, I looked at Arizona statistics, and we had, at that time, I think I had come to the conclusion, this is not scientific, but 60,000 or so short homes. So if are we adding enough to counteract the influx of population, the household formations, all of this stuff is because what frustrates me is that clients that see on the news or they see on the media that like, sell now and prepare for home prices to go down. And I'm like, well, are you looking at the data? Because I don't see it. And so I feel like sharing it, and that's why I'm doing it today. And so that's really, I think the extra Bookspan Baker team difference is that, we look at this stuff in a broader, bigger way. We try to be your financial partner. We try to educate the consumer, and we really take the time to work through some of those things. Because this last thing I want to do is for myself is I don't believe that prices are going to go down. So why wouldn't I put at least some data behind it that supports that? And so listen, I think 20 years nationally. I mean, you might even say 15 or 10 years Arizona. It depends how much building and influx of population we have. But I still think we have a long way to go. And 1.2 months supply isn't enough to get us out of sort of the idea that there's more sellers than buyers, right? And I love to get to more stable inventory, but at the same time, we have to be prepared for prices not to just go bubbling off.
So then just break it down for me. How many houses are we short?
In Arizona, last I checked, we were probably 60,000 short.
Okay.
So that would mean that you would have to get 60,000 plus, and also then the demand would have to also be balanced, right? And so, that would basically mean that you would have how many people in the market? I don't know, 100,000. I mean, you know what I mean? Like there would have to be a significant amount of people not wanting to buy.
All right. Hey, Matt, really appreciate it. That's good stuff. Just more ammo,
More fuel.
ammunition
Yeah, more ammo.
to
You
talk
bet.
with your clients. So
More
that's
confidence.
what we're going to talk about today, Todd, on the 3-pack. I did an hour-long training last week with my team on this, and I got about 10 minutes. So, but that is the biggest objection right now. Is interest rates are high and they're going up, and we're stuck at this. Everybody remembers the 2.75%. And sometimes it's hard to move the needle. So I want to go through some of the things some of the conversations that I'm having with people to help overcome this. I don't want to get into the game because of interest rates. So first question I always ask people, do you like money? If you like money, do not let interest rates get in the way, because it's all about making money. Follow the money. So here's what we know. The historic average interest rate is 6.75%. Okay. So we're winning. Our interest rates are still low. So it's a matter of perspective. Yes, they're higher than the 2.75, but when you take a look at the historic average, they're still low. Homes are expected to appreciate at least 8% this year. So this concept of home, going to Matt's point, the concept of home prices going down is, especially here in Arizona. I always ask people when they say that, just let me know where you're getting your information from, because I want to read that, because I'm not reading anything. And then homes are expected to appreciate between 2 and 5% over the following several years. Rates are still low. We know that. Rates are expected to go up several times this year, so take advantage now. Inflation is outpacing interest rates,
Good point.
which is a great point. And then the one thing that I have up that I don't have up there is, at some point, interest rates will go back down. So get in the game, and maybe down the road, several years, it'll be time to refinance. Don't just leave money on the table because you're focused on a number.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's real important, Mike. Last week, we even talked about the fact that, have a conversation with people you might have just sold, or maybe you didn't even sell. It doesn't have to be about primary residence. It could just be about investment property. It could be helping them build their future. Last week, we talked about a real estate being the average blue collar worker's 401k.
We're going to get into that.
Okay. Then let's go to number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I like to have conversations about credit card debt. Most buyers that I know of and that I work with, they have credit card debt. Just about every buyer has credit card debt. And most are paying above 10% in interest rate. Most of them are anywhere from 15 to 20%. Most are paying annual fees, and they're okay with credit card debt. But I have yet to buy an appreciating asset using credit card debt. Everything that's on my credit cards is a depreciating asset, and rates for appreciating and rates for an appreciating asset, such as a home. Yes, 5.75% interest rate, whatever it is right now, is a lot lower than what your credit card interest rate is. And if you're okay with carrying credit card debt at a 15 to 18 to a 20% interest rate, and you're not buying anything that's making you money, it's time to refocus and look through things through a different prism.
Yeah, credit cards and student loans and autos, new cars, boats, RVs, all these things are things that, sure, they're fun every weekend, but they really play a big issue in your ability to qualify for purchasing a home. And so, again, it's one of those things that, people, when the market tanked, everybody, and this is historical. If you look back at the last 3 trade cycles, the 80s, the 90s, and today, or even 2006, and then today, last 4, what you're going to find is people, when the market becomes depressed, their credit card debt increases because they go buy things to make themselves feel good in a bad market. And so we get that. And sometimes that's cars, sometimes that's boats. Well, this past year, when everybody got last year, when they got their stimulus check. Thank you. What ended up happening is they all went out and bought RVs. That's why it's hard to find when they bought side-by-sides. They bought all these toys. Well, that $3,000 was a nice down payment, Mike, but it didn't cover the $36,000 price range for the product. So, so credit card debt is something that is always a cycle. But to your point, it's the worst thing you can do if you're trying to prepare yourself for the future.
So then if you're okay with an 18% interest rate on a credit card,
Yep.
why are you not okay with a still record low interest rate on an appreciating asset?
We're right.
And that's the question that I'm asking these people.
Yeah, buy an investment property, to your point, and if it's at 5%, you're going to get at least 10% per year right now for rents.
All right, and then the third one is, again, do you like money? We refer to it on our team as the real estate 401k plan, not sanctioned by the SEC, but not only with buying a property, what you're really doing, and this is the thing that we teach all of our clients, is you're building your own retirement plan. And so the moment, you have to live somewhere, right? At the end of the day, you have to live somewhere. So you're either renting, you're either buying, or you're living in your parents' basement and hoping that they kill over and that you take over the house, which is not a bad plan. That's what my kids are doing. They're living in the basement right now of my home. But, each month, again, even though your interest rate's higher, each month you're buying down your principal, and I refer to it as a forced savings account. If I get a $500,000 loan today, I live in that house for 30 years. Okay, in 30 years' time, now I've got I got an almost liquid asset. That's $500,000 that I would have either invested in somebody else's real estate 401k program, but now I'm buying down my principal. So if you're renting, then I have that conversation after I have a talk with people about the real estate 401k plan. If you're renting, now you're just investing in someone else's real estate 401k plan. It doesn't matter about the number in front of the percentage sign. What really matters is, do you like money and do you want to make money? And I always teach our clients is you make money by owning a home 4 ways. That house will go up in value. It's called appreciation. Number 2, again, we talked about paying down your principal, that forced savings account. Number 3, tax write-offs. And hey, I tell people, interest rates are up. Great news. You know what that means? There's more to write off, right? It's a matter it's a matter of perspective. And then if you do move and you hang on to your home and turn it into a rental, which we encourage all of our sellers to do, you realize positive cash flow. So you take a look at all the ways that we make money on a piece of real estate. If you like money, do not pay attention. It doesn't matter what the interest rate is. What matters is, are you making money and are you building a retirement plan through real estate?
Absolutely. So, the thing about the with rent, say, for instance, if you're buying your own property, be aware, if you're a single person, of the $250,000 capital gains tax incentive. And if you're married, then the $500,000 capital gains incentive. So in other words, over the last 2 years, we've watched properties, Toll Brothers specifically, one of the builders, that was selling properties in the Phoenix Metro for about $575,000. You were finishing about $7. Those properties are now worth $1.2 million. There's $500,000 in equity there that you've received over the last 2 years. I don't know what kind of job you have, but I got to imagine you don't have something where you can collect $250,000 worth of tax-free money per year. So, this buying a home is a significantly incredible investment opportunity. You get depreciation you can write off as one of the write-offs on the home, which helps you down the road. But at the same particular point, where else can you go? If you buy a house and you let somebody rent it from you, they're going to pay you about 10% of the value of that property per year in rent. I mean, if it's costing you 5 or 6%, sure, you're going to pay a little bit of tax on that income. But so I recommend you stay in your house. When you watch your equity get to about $250,000 if you're a single person, or $500,000 if you're married, you might want to consider it's time to move up. Yeah. So it might be time to make that change, because you're going to have a better opportunity for greater appreciation once you get out of that stale community and move over into a community that's neighboring properties that are booming in price.
Yeah, and so I know, if I invest money into my retirement account, I got to cut a check, and every year I do. I still like to diversify, and I cut a check to my wealth manager, and I've got a SEPT. It might have a Roth IRA, you might have a regular 401k, whatever the case is. For me to invest, I've got to cut a check. Okay. for me to buy a piece of real estate, again, I have to live somewhere. So now I'm taking what I would pay in rent, and I'm now investing into a retirement account. And again, then if you have a renter in there, it's one of the only things. You have somebody else building into your savings account and building into your retirement.
Somebody
and
else is paying your mortgage.
So it doesn't matter. If I'm going to make this kind of return, I'll pay 10% if I have to.
Absolutely.
Because it's still far cheaper than what my credit card rate is. So.
And if you do biweekly payments and put a little extra money towards principal, you pay it off in 21 or maybe even 18 years.
Yep. All right.
Did you have anything you wanted to
Well, the average renter, and I put this stat out a while ago, has a negative net worth. Like negative $6,000 net worth for an average renter. The average homeowner has over a $300,000 net worth. I mean, that's proof enough. Like, why would you ever pay money for rent?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice segment, Mike.
All right. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks, Matt. All right. We're going to bring in our very own Kyle Fouts, our managing broker, who, well, today he's as handsome as ever. So just check out.
Naturally, yeah, I have a face for radio.
Face for radio.
Webinar. I'm sorry.
Not even that. I don't know.
I'm not good. All right. Fair enough.
All right. So let's just break it down. I know that you last week you posted on the Facebook groups, and you know what was on agents' minds, and so it seemed like one of the common things. And I've just been hearing stories is procuring cause is becoming, if not one of the top topics, misunderstood topics.
Correct.
People's perception of procuring cause and their interpretation of procuring cause. It's why we have a broker team, because it is not up for your interpretation, because we aren't brokers.
Right.
So let's break it down. What is procuring cause?
So first thing first, Mike, I just want, in a half hour, we're not going to be able to cover every nuance to this process. There is very detailed. There is always different things that pop up on every situation. This is kind of 10,000 foot view. We do get a lot of confusion about it, a lot of questions about it. So I just wanted to kind of go through some of the basics, but it's not going to be maybe specific to your situation. As always, please contact us as brokers. We're happy to go through this. Dwayne and I sit on the Professional Standards Committee and have done so for many years. So we've been through it a few times, one or two, and we're happy to kind of walk you through that process to make sure you understand what's going on. So what is procuring cause? It's at the very basic answer is that it's when you feel you're entitled to money that someone else was paid, or when you get kind of that uncomfortable call after you've finished a transaction from somebody else thinking that they're entitled to the money that you were paid, essentially. So that's when procuring cause comes to light. It's done through a process called arbitration through the Arizona Association of Realtors. But that's just the basics of what it is. As far as how it's established, there is a very detailed definition in the Black's Law Dictionary that is used by the Professional Standards Committee. It's the cause originating a series of events which, without break in their continuity, result in the accomplishment of the prime object, which would be closing. Sounds, you know, and that's legal speak for the person essentially who started the process, got the ball rolling, that ultimately led to a close of escrow without a break in the chain of events. So that's kind of one of the topics that we're always going to be discussing when it comes to preparing.
Yeah, and so at the end of the day, it's buyer closes on a house. There is a co-broke that's offered out there, and two agents now are arguing and fighting over who really was the responsible agent for that transaction. And that's really how I break down procuring cause.
That's ultimate. That's 99% of procuring cause situations are exactly that. You know, buyers agents fighting over or arguing over who should be paid the commission.
All right. So what matters and what doesn't matter?
So the beginning conversations, agents have a misconception of all of the work and time and effort that they've put into a particular client that they're working with. We hear about relationships that they've built over sometimes many years with a person. I've done this. I've shown them. I've sold them 3 homes in the past. I've worked with them for the last year, the last 6 months. All of that stuff is not lost on us. We completely understand that relationship. But when it deals with procuring cause, the only thing that matters is the one subject property that you're talking about, the house they ultimately purchased. You know, and the what led the buyer to the point where they made the decision to purchase that particular property. So you could have been with them for the last year, showing them homes every weekend.
I think one of the most common ones, and I'd love to get into some examples to really put things in perspective. So I've got John and Susie Smith set up on a subscription inside the MLS.
Yep.
So they are every day or every other day, they're getting emails of all new listings.
Right.
And then they show up to that house, maybe during an open house, or just happen to get into a conversation with an agent at a coffee shop.
Right.
My understanding is just because the MLS is sending you a subscription, that's not necessarily procuring cause.
Not necessarily, but one point I want to make is there is sometimes an argument to be made for just that. So it's not, as I said at the beginning, there's nuance to every situation. Not everyone's going to be the same, and there's different sets of facts. I mean, that's just the reality of this process. It doesn't ever take the same form. Usually it takes more than that, I would agree, but there are times when you could make a compelling argument to say that potentially that drip got that ball started, right? It's not it wouldn't be my favorite argument to make, to have to go in front of a panel based on, but is it a plausible start to procuring costs? Possibly, sure.
That's why I set every one of my clients up with a subscription for every single listing that ever pops up into the MLS. Therefore,
that's why I'm covered. Talk about procuring costs weekly. I mean, it's part of your compensation plan.
I think also one of the areas where agents get really tripped up on is new builds.
Okay.
And not understanding why if I send my client information about a new build community and then they just do it anyways, they show up without me.
Yeah.
I'm literally responsible for helping them find this community,
Correct.
sending them there. They just happen to go in, without me.
Yep.
Why don't I have procuring cause in most cases?
New builds are kind of an animal unto themselves. They have kind of a different set of rules. Oftentimes the homes that you're going in, that your clients are going in to look at, are not on MLS. So there is no offering of compensation. That's one of the aspects of procuring cause that has to be present in order for there to be an arbitration claim, is there has to be an offering of a co-broker or a commission. For builders, that often isn't the case, because if it's not on MLS, it's not in like a broad scope offering of compensation, and they have rules that are it's pretty black and white. It's if you're not there.
They make it very,
right? They do.
It's not ambiguous.
But
that's
you
for
as
sure.
the agent are kind of tasked with knowing that going in, right? If you know your clients are looking in a new build world, you have to have set expectations up front very clearly with them that, listen, I need to be there. I mean, I know nobody wants to talk about compensation. I get that. It's kind of an uncomfortable conversation to have with a client. Like, hey, this is how I make my living. In order for me to be compensated and to represent you through this process, I need to be there with you on those first. If you want to go see something, call me. We'll go see it, or I'll set up something with somebody else to go see it.
Could I make the case? The builder puts a home in the MLS, spec home, 60-day close. My client receives that through my subscription and then goes without me. Could I make the case? And they buy that spec home.
I've never seen a builder versus broker arbitration come to fruition. Could you make an argument? Sure. Builders have teams of lawyers behind them. It's an uphill road, tough sledding. I mean, could you do it? Potentially.
Yeah, Mike, you and I come from that world, that buyer side of the new home build world, and realistically, there is a case on record, precedents from UDC versus whoever the consumer, or the consumer versus UDC, where UDC ended up paying two compensations. They paid one to the agent who actually ultimately brought the consumer, and then one to another agent who did exactly what you said. So that everything though is on a different thing, and it also depends on what the wording. Every builder has a different registration. Every registration has different terms. So there's one thing you can do that protects you at every single builder. Have a buyer broker exclusive employment agreement with your client. It not only established the fact that don't go without me in the paragraph right below the compensation, but in addition to that, if the consumer walks in, so I've always set my clients up where when the consumer walks into the new build and they say, listen, I see the plaque on the wall, but I'm subject to this buyer broker agreement with my realtor. And if you're not willing to honor this, I can't buy here. because I don't want to pay my realtor the fee. And in those regards, sometimes you and your client can persuade the builder to make the compensation plan, even if the builder wasn't prepared to.
I agree. Yeah, and I agree with that. I do want to make the distinction that a buyer broker, because it's a very common misconception that having a buyer broker agreement impacts procuring cause situations, and it has literally, and we'll get that honestly from people that are on the professional standards committee having that conversation with panels, and it's like, you're supposed to know that that's not the case. Having a buyer broker agreement has nothing to do with procuring costs.
Right.
Okay. So it's a document between you and your buyer.
All right, so let's break it down. So let's talk about procuring cause as it relates to being on the listing side.
So we see it a lot with open houses, of course. This is kind of the topic that when it came up in the Facebook post that was kind of specifically brought to light, a gentleman had a listing, and it happens very commonly that people will attend those open houses with or without their agents, or they may not have agents, right? So again, if you're the listing agent, you're holding an open house, can you be considered the procuring cause? Of course, because at that point, people are walking through the home. Maybe they make the decision to purchase right then and there. If their agent's not there, even so, representation and compensation are separate. Those two things don't go hand in hand. So even if they have an agent, even if they have a buyer broker, you as the listing agent should be asking, are they working with somebody, asking them to sign in, trying to get contact information, because communication is incredibly key in this process. It's hard. You're not going to be able to prove the he said, she says, the conversations that you had at the open houses, the phone calls that you made later thereafter. So emails and text, anything documented like any other transaction is critical, especially to this process, because you can show the conversations that you had with the party who was potentially interested, and maybe show the point where they made the decision, where they told you they want to write an offer. That's kind of ding, ding, ding. That's the level you're trying to reach if you have somebody who's that interested. And so as a listing agent, just understand that people are going to come in whether they have agents or not. If they do, you should be asking, but that doesn't mean you can't have the conversations with them. That also doesn't mean that you can't be the procuring cause. Mm-hmm. So you have a decision to make as to whether you want to pursue that. Some listing agents will say, listen, just, if you have an agent, go to your agent, write the offer. They'll let sleeping dogs lie. And understandably so, other agents will say, no, I procured this sale. I started this process. If you want to go to your other agent, you do it, but we're going to have issues down the road potentially.
Yeah, but I prefer the latter, because I'm also, I'm always thinking about, my fiduciary responsibility. If a buyer comes into my open house, even though the efforts that I put into an open house, I procured that buyer, I want them. I'd much rather have them have representation, because, I'm not a big fan of dual agency. So then therefore now I'm going to be doing this transaction with an unrepresented buyer. I just, CYA.
I get it. And and there's nothing wrong with that. I like that answer too. I also don't begrudge the agent who doesn't have that thought process on it. What if it's not your listing? What if you're holding it open for someone? So now you're looking for buyers, right? And so there's different situations that play into that, which I get.
Yeah, but in that situation, you're not representing the seller. So then I don't have a problem.
In theory, because the brokerage is representing the seller.
Yeah. So, Mike, you're a big systems guy, and your team is, and so holding open houses. To Kyle's point, question is, are you under contract with another brokerage to, help you find your new home? Yes or no? Okay, and then regardless, but let's pretend they say no. The next question is, well, how did you hear about my open house? You need to document that, because that could be a piece of evidence that you could provide, for the preponderance of evidence in a procuring cause hearing.
That's a great point, Todd. That's exactly right. I actually have that in my notes, is document how they found out about the property, because again, it could have been through your signs on the open house. They walk in, they want to buy it. That's a very specific set of events that led to them wanting to put an offer.
And then I would just say, if that buyer, if you ask the buyer how they found out about the open house, and if they say, well, my agent sent me the information on the open house, I wouldn't mess with it. Because it's going to be hard to win that one.
Well, if I've learned anything from being on the professional standards committee, is it's never as black and white as it may seem. Agents commonly think that this is like a.
Who would have thought I'd have been arguing the conservative side of this?
I'm kind of impressed today, Mike.
Okay.
Right.
Total side note.
Yes.
Separate situation.
Okay.
Agent holds an open house for another agent to secure buyers. Seller hates the listing agent, wants out of that, and tries to talk the agent doing the open house into taking over the listing.
Okay, this sounds very specific. Go ahead.
Yeah. So,
where do we go from there?
Yeah. Where do we go? What does that agent do? The agent was very specific. Obviously, it is a situation. It was very specific. You need to talk to your agent. You need to talk to your agent. You need to talk to your agent. Client keeps calling the agent.
Okay. The conversation that I would counsel an agent to have with that seller is that, listen, first of all, if I'm the agent at the open house getting this kind of bombardment of, I want to work with you, I don't like this other person, I'm probably having a conversation with the other agent saying, here's what I'm getting. What's the deal here? Should we figure something out here? See, kind of feel that out and see how the agent who is the listing agent feels about maybe letting them work with you. At the end of the day, their relationship is with the brokerage, technically.
True.
But that said, if that agent that's a non-starter, then the conversation is, if you're having issues with the agent that you're working with, you need to contact the broker and they can help you. Okay, they'll be happy to have that conversation, and then we'll have the conversation with the agent.
All right. So back to your example up here. So we are the agent on the listing side. I know that the buyer that we just received an offer from also saw the same home with another agent.
So I wanted to touch on this part very briefly because it happens and it's confusing to the listing agent when I know that you showed the house to buyers A and B, or buyers A, and then they send an offer in with agent B, right? So I just used a lot of letters, but you know what I mean. They send an offer in with some other agent. And then the listing agent goes, well, wait a minute, I don't want to be caught up in a procuring cause situation. So now they're kind of confused as to where to go from here. That the procuring cause has nothing to do with you as a listing agent. You have a fiduciary to your seller, like we mentioned earlier. You just work with the offer that came in, and then down the road after close of escrow, if you can, at that point, you can inform agent A that, hey, just FYI, these people submit an offer. I'm assuming they probably figured it out at some point during the process. But that said, you don't have to go to agent A and say the person who showed it first and say, hey, just so you know, we got an offer from the other, because that could cause the transaction to fail or never get started, because then agent A goes to agent B, which they shouldn't do, but they do, and it causes conflict. Buyer says, I'm out, and now you've lost a sale, right? You don't want to go down that road.
And at the end of the day, the battle's between the two buyers agents, and so there's only X amount of money on the line 100%, there.
100%. Right. Yep.
All right, buyer side.
So yeah, documentation, I've already touched on these, that the buyer broker agreement means nothing to procuring cause, and also to document. The more communications and proof essentially that you have that you were the person, you were the reason that the buyer made that ultimate decision to purchase, the better off your case is going to be. Even if they happen to go elsewhere, with the contract, you still have that necessary documentation.
All right, so this is a good one. So I know my buyer bought a house with another agent or from the listing agent, and I'm confident that I have procuring cause. Besides picking up the phone, having a conversation with their brokers ASAP, at what point do I make the argument and go after procuring cause, so and go after the commission?
Kind of like I alluded to in the last section, you don't call up the agent who is now with the buyer and say, those are my clients. You don't cause that conflict, even though it's natural to want to do that. It's also natural to want to call the clients and say, hey, what the heck? I was working with you. I've done all this work. You kind of have to, unfortunately, you have to sit on your hands and wait. What I would counsel the agent to do is write your narrative. It's all fresh in your mind right now. You know why you're angry, you know why you're frustrated, and you know the sequence of events. So you kind of put together your thoughts now versus waiting until the end of the transaction to do that, just while it's all fresh. And then you wait and kind of monitor the process, or monitor the on the periphery. You're not going to get any direct information because you're not communicating with anybody internally, but you're watching that listing to see if it does end up going to close. And then you can kind of do some amateur sleuthing, find out if it truly is your client. So you can call the listing agent. Hopefully they'll be communicative to you at that point. And then you can kind of get your ducks in a row. So that's usually how that process works. It shouldn't be a situation where, you go scorched earth and all of a sudden you're talking to everybody. It's just, you want to let that go, even though it's not easy to do.
So 322153, the Commission's rights to suspend, deny, and revoke a license says that we're not supposed to allow a controversy to interfere with the goings-on of a real estate transaction. So by you doing what our broker has recommended, or by not doing what he's recommended, what you could be doing is putting yourself in a situation where you violated the law, and that's even worse than procuring cause. Now, the other piece of this coin is a buyer-broker agreement, although Kyle's 100% correct, of course, that just the contract doesn't mean anything to procuring cause because it's not necessarily a procuring cause issue. However, what you will need to know is that agents believe, Kyle, that by having one that they are now due that commission if the buyer buys anything, and that is true. However, that's not the way the brokerage may desire to enforce it, because we don't want agents just going out there filling out buyer broker agreements with everybody and then trying to hold everybody accountable to those. So sometimes it's not in the best practice and the future interest of the agent, the client, or the brokerage to actually go after that money.
Right. And that's, and I would say a talking point for the buyer broker is that they're great to have because most people who sign them are not going to circumvent them. You sign something. I know I signed something with you. I'm going to work with you. If I have an issue with that, I'll figure that out before I go to. But then there's other people who sign 10 of them with no conscience and not worry about it. Right. And that's the person you have to decide.
It's like putting up a fence around your yard. It's not going to keep everybody out, but it generally does. Yeah. Okay, so more specific to when to act. So now
just talk about it.
Ducks are in a row.
Yep.
When it closes escrow. Right. Who do I notify? Am I reaching out to the title company, or what is now that process to file a claim for procuring costs?
So what I would have you do is be kind of in communication with the broker team, kind of like, this is what I'm thinking, and do I have an angle here, and we'll guide you through that. You have 180 days from close of escrow, so it's not something where we have to right at closing you have to do it now or forever hold your peace. It's 6 months. You have a lengthy period of time to get everything, which it doesn't usually take that long, but you have that long. And so, just let us know. Your brokerage team has to be involved in the process. You can't just file for yourself. Time frame, as I said, is 180 days. Negotiations. So what usually happens when an agent calls and they have a legit procuring cause claim is that the brokers will talk. Dwayne will talk to their DB and they'll say, we want to know if we're the ones filing, we want to know what our agent is looking for. Are you looking for 100% of the commission? Because then these kind of non-formal negotiations aren't necessarily appropriate. But if you're willing to compromise, then we'll have a conversation with the other side's brokerage team and see if that agent is willing to compromise. And if there is, then you can kind of resolve this before it really gets to the point where you have to go in front of the panel. Okay. So a lot of them are resolved in that manner, just through communications amongst the brokers. I will say definitively, and I put this West USA position at the end, we're going to support our agent's decision no matter what. So we will never state to you or say, you must do this, you should, or you have to, or anything like that. It's completely the agent's decision. If you want to go full bore 100% and that's you expect to get 100%, then we'll make the best case possible for that situation and we'll do our best, right? As will you. And that's kind of how it goes. If you're willing to compromise and they come back and say, we'll split it with you, we'll do 50%, we'll bring that to you, the agent. And is that okay with you? Are you good with 50%? Yes or no? If not, we'll go back to them. So I just want to make it clear that this is your game that we're assisting with, and we'll give you all of the information and knowledge that we have and our experience. And of course, we'll counsel you if you have questions on it. We'll walk it through with you. But at the end of the day, the decision will be yours because it is your money we're working on, right? That we're playing for.
And I think a good thing to think about, Mike, is that from an agent's perspective, so calling upon you, would you feel that this procuring cause process, even with the brokers assisting along the way, because it's going to take time for you to not only put all this stuff together, but you'll have to show up to the hearings, you'll have to sit across from the person you're accusing. So the thing is, how much should an agent maybe be willing to settle, and maybe not get the whole amount just so that they can continue to move forward with the next transaction that they're already working, rather than interfere with, business moving forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's hard because every situation is unique and every situation is different. But I just no math wizard, but I do know 0 plus 0 always equals 0, and especially, and I have to assess the road ahead.
Yep.
Now, if I feel like it, for me, I feel like if it's clear and concise and that other agent did something shady and needs to be held accountable, that'd be one thing. But in most situations, I will always negotiate.
So Kyle, to your point, when you're working and helping the agents negotiate, should an agent take the position of principal? It's the principle of the matter, or should it be more about understanding what procuring cause is and how it's negotiated and what a more favorable likely outcome may be?
Yeah, and we'll always go through that. I mean, I understand the principle, and there's always principles associated, especially when you're the complainant.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
the principle of the matter, and I get that, and we'll go through that with you ad nauseum. At the end of the day, though, sometimes you have to set the principal part aside and just make a business decision. That's a great way to put it. Real quick, though, I just want to say it's $500 to file. So it depends on what side you're on. If you're the one who received the commission, the two parties put up $500 each. Okay. So if you received the commission and you go to arbitration, it's all or nothing. Okay. If it ever gets to the arbitration point, that's what I have here for cost. It's $500 per party. Okay. And the losing party forfeits that $500. So if you receive the commission, a $15,000 commission, and you go to arbitration, you're not willing to settle because you think you have the better case, and you go to arbitration, you're betting your 15 grand plus the 500. So you're throwing potentially good money after bet, right? If you lose that case, you lose all the commission. They don't split the commission during the arbitration.
So it's not really arbitration. It's more of a jury trial.
Well, I mean, it is. It's jury of your peers. It's three brokers and agents who have gone through the process of professional standards. So
and mediation first, right? So you get to touch your toes in the water and see whether it's cold or hot before you really go to it.
All right. So real quickly, we've got about 2 minutes. So I represent buyer.
Yeah.
We close on the house, I get a commission, and then somebody files procuring cause against me.
Yeah.
During this process, the buyer just, complained and said that, that other agent was not communicative and so forth. Can I bring the buyer into arbitration?
You can. It's probably, we can go through that, but it's probably better to get maybe a notarized statement from them, because they will be cross-examined in it's not a trial, but in the hearing potentially. And that can be a difficult thing for them to go through. So they can be very beneficial. They can also hurt you. So that's one of the aspects that we'd certainly talk to you about.
All right.
Wow.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Look at you.
He didn't even get into estrangement or because that's the 3-hour class.
Tune in Thursday for the broker roundtable.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's a great point, Nick. If you've got any questions or been sending in questions, hop on the broker roundtable, Kyle, Thursday, and go after them. All right. We'll leave you with the quote of the day from Steve Jobs. If you are working on something that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you.
Wow. You read that before.
I did read it before.
You must have. It was good.
I'm like, that's kind of fluffy. I appreciate everybody joining us today. Go out and sell a home.